It's really bad.
Hi guys, welcome to this week's podcast. I'm with
Mr. Squeak.
Squeak. You've drawn the squeaky chair, so I do apologise if we'll now know how.
We should swap it with the one we've got the camera on.
Right, not now.
Not now, no.
No, it adds the entertainment. It's the unplugged nature of being slightly prepared and unprepared at the same time. Right, how's it going? Squeak?
What, one squeak for yes, two squeaks for no? I'm good. I'm doing good. As long as I don't stay still with my adjustment that we just had, then I should be good. But if I move, I'm squeaking. No, we're doing good. Welcome back to another Unplugged Health Series.
Very unplugged. Right, time of year. It's getting a bit darker earlier. It was dark getting out of bed this morning. So the brain is saying, I could quite heavily stay indoors and that. And I was saying to a patient the other day, we're kind of, when you look around us and look at nature, everything's changing its season and everything's changed, but we're the only real species that tries to keep the same routine going the whole year round. So we're trying to work the same hours, do the same thing, whether it's summer or winter. Yeah. So we decided that we'd probably explore the idea of schedule or scheduling.
Yeah, I think that normal, and I've definitely been one that someone has suffered in the past with seasonal affectional disorder, so SAD, SAD, and like this year, I've just been really on top of everything to make sure that everything I know I could do is in place to stop me from suffering from it. Previously I've done things like I've self-sabotaged, so business has been great and then it's just gone up and down at this time. So it's the awareness of it, but I've spoken to a few clients that their motivation has been a little bit lower, purely because I think we've gone from not as much summer in August to having a warmer September, to then the last couple of days it's been windier. One of my clients is in Scotland, so he's had it's even more of a change. And what can we do to actually help ourselves? Because the nature will help us, but the nature of the actual changes of season doesn't help us with our lifestyle.
I think it's an interesting one is that on one hand, we've got this expectation that we must carry on doing as we normally do. But if we have to also be honest, I suppose the question is, should we be keeping the same schedule? Should we be trying to do the same? Or do we go with the flow a little bit and understand there's going to be a shift in how I function. There is a case of that we feel maybe a bit slow or sluggish. So do we adjust our expectations as well as then also adjust our environment? So you're talking about the SADS lamp. I've got lots of patients who use the SAD lamp and swear by it. This time of year we do the vitamin D campaign and highlight different things. So I think there's loads of things that we can look into and we can do to help ourselves. But I think also the difference is that to acknowledge that we do function in the Northern Hemisphere compared to growing up in where I did in South Africa, where we can produce vitamin D all year round. Our winter is good as an average summer's day where I grew up. And so the idea of SADS was not a thing. The idea of not having enough vitamin D wasn't really a consideration.
Did you get hit more when you came over?
No, not really. But I know a lot of South Africans have. For me personally, I don't suffer from SADS. I'm aware through the years that there is a difference, but I can't say that I particularly go out of my way using a light box and everything. But I am aware that there's a difference in mood and you're just motivation to get out and do stuff. But I think also it's helped that I've never really grown up with that mindset that the weather is a major factor determining what you should do or not. So I think there's also a psychological element of going, it's cold, it's rainy outside, so I don't feel like going out, rather than, right, waterproof's on this, we're going for a walk.
Yeah.
So I think there's some level of that you don't buy into it, but on the other hand, I think there's some that you've got to acknowledge that it does have an effect on us. So trying to find that happy medium of what works for you. it's an interesting one. But there's also, again, like the vitamin D is a big thing. I as I said, on the sad slide, I'm aware that I don't really suffer that, but even I felt that this year thinking I might get a lamp or something and put it in my office at home, just as a better amount of interest of identifying that I won't get as much direct light and stimulation as I normally do. But I can't say that I do it from a clinical perspective that I have symptoms. But I know that in the middle of winter here, if I go to South Africa and hit the middle of summer there, my brain fizzes, I'm wide awake, and I'm up at 4:30 or 5 in the morning. Whereas I could quite easily stay in bed, many hours.
Yeah, so it's not like on the surface, but you are still getting hit.
I'm aware that there is an influence. So what it must be for some people to really suffer with SADS, I can't relate to, but I get it on a superficial level, but I see it with patients.
And I think this is where we put those things in place before. Like if we look back at previous years, like if you suffered before, chances are if you haven't done anything, you're going to suffer again. So what can we do to put in place? And I think being on top of your schedule. So when I say schedule, your routine is that putting yourself first. I think that what can we do to wake up? So my routine I have, get up and I'm not having caffeine first thing in the morning. And that is probably one of the things which I see a lot of people do. It gives them this dopamine hit. It gives this switches off like the adenosine receptors and stuff. So we don't feel the tired, but then we get more of a hit when it wears off, right? But also activates the bowel, and it's like unnatural for our body to do this stuff. So can we wake up without caffeine and not rely on it? Let our body naturally wake up. Now, we also do need that cortisol hit. And I think when it comes more to the darker months, it's easier to see who's got lower cortisol, as in like in the morning. Because they're very rare, they're not up and at it. And it's not to say I'm not up and at it all the time. I do take a little bit of time to wake up, but I know when I've had problems with my actual natural circadian rhythm that we want high cortisol and then low through the day. When it was like just flat, like it was normal for like middle of the day and afternoon, I found it really hard to get going. So what were the things I'd done apart from like some functional medicine stuff with supplements? Obviously this isn't, I don't want to say different supplements that people could use with it because I don't want people to self-medicate. There needs to be different levels, but doing like something to get your heart rate up, or going for a walk within the first 15 minutes, having that SAD lamp within the first 15 minutes, it's really, really powerful. But it's done the night before. I found that as I've changed my routine, sleep in around 9:30, 10 o'clock when possible. If Man United are playing, then priorities. But especially if Ronaldo is going to score in the 95th minute.
You're going to stay up later.
Yeah, like I've had a couple of later nights and I've felt a bit more tired today. But having this, I'm in bed by 10 o'clock reading and getting to sleep. Ideally 9:30 reading and getting to sleep. And if I'm a little bit tired, I don't even do the reading, to go straight to sleep. But having those consistent bedtimes is, when I look at working with clients and we look to improve if people aren't sleeping through the night, consistent bedtimes, consistent wake times is a complete game changer for people for their circadian rhythm. And this sort of time of year, I think trying to keep as consistent as possible is beneficial. We also have that aspect of that if we don't get up at say 6:30, that we're used to getting up and we know our routine, or say you've got to get your kids ready like for school and all this sort of stuff. If you get up at 7, that's going to cause you more stress because you're going to be more rushed. So as a result, it's a less than natural reaction from the body. So what can we actually do? And so I have that routine where I get up, I'll have like a small protein shake, like not a full serving, just a little bit, so I have fluid and get some calories in me, just for the sake that I want that to help regulate my digestion rather than caffeine. And even that change, because I used to have caffeine all the time, even that change, just switching that. I have caffeine, I'm not demonizing caffeine, but that change has really, really helped me.
I think also the key thing with caffeine is that difference is some people wake up and then will have a coffee.
It's just habit most of the time.
Whereas some people will have coffee to wake up.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. Is like I'm hanging until I have my coffee and then I can get going. Versus I get going and then I have a coffee. It's very subtle difference, but it's a very telling.
If it's someone that doesn't need coffee, they have it because they like the taste of it. Why not have decaf? That's one. I suppose if you're really like deep into your coffees, like some people can taste the difference between caffeinated and decaf. I personally can't. So there's still caffeine in decaf.
I think that the other key thing with that is you go, and this is going into the functional stuff, is depending on how we break down coffee and how we stimulate. I've got some people who can't have coffee, after probably 10 o'clock in the morning.
Someone's got a slow COMT or something.
Yeah, they're going to be awake at night. Other people process it quicker, but again, also in the context of if someone's having one coffee in the day and they're not hanging for it and it's full caffeine, then I don't have a problem with it. If it's a case I've got to have a coffee to get going in the morning, and I have to have a coffee mid-morning, then I have to have one mid-afternoon, then it's like, well, hang on.
Yeah,
there's a stimulant being used there, so delve quicker into why you're hanging for that coffee or needing that coffee to prop you up.
I think that's where we get into the individual. There's no specific protocol for like one size fits all, as we say. That are carbs bad? No, not necessarily, not inherently bad, but for someone that's got very poor blood sugar management, we might need to take them out for a bit. Are fats bad? No, not inherently, but if someone's got poor gallbladder, they can't stimulate their gallbladder very well, then fats are going to be bad for them at the moment while we fix that. And
so do you see they would have a slightly different routine in winter, morning routine in winter than in summer?
I don't seem to have much different. Apart from,
see, that's I
think I notice if I miss it in the winter. If I miss it, I notice it more in the winter.
Yeah,
but I don't.
I notice that in the winter it's the opposite. At night, I'm shutting down earlier. I'm aware of more the cortisol dropping and the melatonin kicking in than necessarily in the morning.
Is that because it gets darker earlier?
Yeah. So the melatonin has been stimulated quicker and earlier on. And I think also it gets colder, so you kind of get home and you think, well, whereas in the summer it's nice to come home and go, oh, it's still bright, I can sit outside.
Yeah.
You want to be
do some exercise as well.
Active longer in the day. So I think in the winter, something like exercise, you kind of want to pick that window to try and do that, because if it drifts through to the day, you very quickly go, the light's fading and that. So I think you've got to kind of you've got less window because of the weather.
Squeaks for a nod.
Yeah. Well, that's when I hear a squeak and I'm not looking, then I know you're nodding or falling asleep. But then you've got that window, because I find for me in winter it's really harder once it gets dark. So then it's like late afternoon, evening, because to then go and then say, right, I'm going to do
have
exercise.
That cortisol drop, don't you? Like your natural circadian rhythm. This is one of the problems that people have, is that 9-10 o'clock when cortisol drops, they're stimulated by blue light or stressful horror films, the news, all these different things. So that picks that cortisol up, and then you've got to wait for it to drop for melatonin to take over.
The general presumption is that more people tend to do that more in the winter because it's darker early. The night drifts in. I read an article a number of years ago which suggested that the primitive culture, in the northern hemisphere, what they would do in the winter is that they would go to bed and they would sleep early evening, so like 5-6 o'clock when it's dark, and they've got that natural melatonin level, and then they would actually wake and then be productive more around midnight, and then they would drop again. So it's almost like a double dip cortisol. And so they would be productive short period during the day and then in the evening, but they would have had no more than just a power nap in the early evening. And then in summer, they would be very productive all day from an early start, productive all through the day. And then they would have, because it was governed more, they were more in tune with the season and the daylight. So I think they were probably more in tune to having natural cortisol levels, and they're being more switched on to the effect of sunlight onto cortisol and melatonin. Whereas we use a lot of artificial lighting. we are re-stimulating. Now, I think our biggest challenge in the Northern Hemisphere is that we're trying to create the same schedule, same routine all year round. So
well, yeah, because people are going to work in the dark. Yeah.
I have to be at work at a certain time. So there's this question: is that whether if we have got the ability to, could we change slightly our routines around the day so that we can target into when we're more productive and when we're less productive, because we are animals and we are affected by the seasons.
I think another thing you mentioned about the caffeine and people like having different reactions to it. When I look into people's like genetic side of things and genetic SNPs and slow COMT, like that they're slow to get rid of stress hormones. That's when we have to look at when people exercise. So for someone like that, it would be better to exercise before work or in the morning if it's ideal. But for someone that's got slow clearance of stress hormones, cortisol is higher when we work out. To finish work and then exercise could then be impacting their sleep. And that's where it gets the catch-22 of like, well, when can you exercise? Well, it's after work. Okay, we might need to work on it, take exercise out, just having a walk, a lower intensity thing, to get your sleep right, to then bring the exercise to the start when you can actually wake up earlier. And that's having that conversation with people, like, why is it doing it? High cortisol, we're not clearing the stress hormones quickly enough. And
well, I suppose also then if you do work with and you're balancing blood sugar levels and you're getting at least a better sleep pattern, identifying, managing stress levels, you're going to get a clearer idea of the ability to get closer to that routine.
And that's probably then looking to like levels of methylation and stuff. We won't go into that stuff, but it's like you'd have to go into it. There's a whole rabbit hole you could go into.
So there's a lot of people whose routine is generally I have to be at work at a certain time and I get home at a certain time. And I think that's my observation is that through the seasons, people feel more limited, and then you get the influence because of the daylight hours. But again, I think there is that element of, as you said, the SADs, the vitamin D. There's other things that we can do, and probably with the exercise, an element there is a bit of, well, the weather's not great, but it's still fine to go exercise. I need to identify that that's an important thing to keep going. The beauty, I think, these is we've got far better clothing, so we can weather the weather a bit, wrap up warm and stuff. And very often, once you get out and walking, once you get going, and that is really in winter can be really great. But your routine and the consistency of routine can really easily get thrown.
I think, and also like summertime, like I don't like walking and exercising in the summer. Like this time of temperature is my favourite time. I wear my baggy trousers, keep the heating off, even though my wife doesn't. Like Rachel commented on her post yesterday, like she went and put the heating on when I was at the gym. I was like, it's still September, not now, but it is all about routine. And I think like to switch your routine and to keep your routine first, like you have to put yourself first with the awareness of that. Then you can be there for other people. Yeah,
and also that the routine will actually be fairly individual, because two people in a household will have a slightly different needs and they will process the change of season far different. We also find within our centre, this is the time where people are aware of more cough, cold, sniffles from a change of season. So traditionally we would find that there was traditionally supposed to be said that there's more cold flu remedies sold in the change of season rather than in the season. So the change of season with a change of temperature, change of light, puts more stress and demand on the body. So it's also then looking at those things, like maybe some people will focus this time of year a little bit more on some vitamin C, a little bit more on their supportive diet and supporting the immune system a bit more, because especially those with kids, with young kids bringing snotty noses home from school and that, we find more challenges in the change of season from summer to autumn to winter than the other way around.
I think
as opposed to when once we're in the season, we're actually now in a more stable situation. So this time
it's
of year,
the adjustment, the change.
yeah, it's the adjustment which changes, and that puts stress on the body. The body processes that there's a stress, there's a change, and then stress hormones change. So the change of the season is more demanding. My observation is more demanding than actually in the season. So this is the time when people will find, cough,
awareness
colds,
is certainly key. One of the things I speak to people with is that, as we've said about waking in the light, just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal, but the common cold isn't normal. It's common. And it's, if you, like some people, I get my 1 cold or 2 colds a year, but why? What can we do to improve that? And how can we make our immune system a bit more resilient, being aware of stress?
The interesting thing with the resilience, I'm not ever too fussed that if someone picks a cold. I'm more interested in how long does it take them to process and get over it. If it's like, I've had cold for 2 or 3 weeks, it's like that's a long time for the body to process that.
I remember
getting a cold primes our immune system, and we actually want that exposure, but we should be bouncing back quite quickly from a cold.
But also, I remember like competing in bodybuilding, and I'd have colds for like weeks because I would just train through it because it was just a cold.
Yeah, but you're just adding more stress into a stress system.
I wouldn't do it now. No, like if I had a cold, it'd be gone the next day.
Yeah.
Like I'm like 99% certain if the cold came along, it would be gone the next day. But it's putting the things in place to know. Yeah,
and also, as I said, to putting things in place with time in mind. So the classic example for us is vitamin D. So this is the time when within our centre we speak a lot more about vitamin D. We use the vitamin D testing so that we can get a better idea where someone is and what dosage they can do through the winter. Because if it is low and they want to build it up, we want to start now because it can take 2 or 3 months to get that. So that's coming into the winter. It's no good looking at vitamin D and thinking, my health is now deteriorated, maybe vitamin D is an issue, and now it's already in the middle of winter. We had the bizarre situation last year with COVID, where the government came out and then started giving vitamin D supplements into the care homes in January, and it's like, and they were very low dose as well, and it's like you've missed the time frame, because if they are low, you're now getting them ready for spring. You need to be looking at vitamin D now. So
it's also looking at the absorption as well. Like if you've got a very low fat diet, it's not necessarily going to be as good.
Yeah.
So like looking at like overall, like adding the vitamin D is a great thing to add. Like it's a little bit of the foundation, but if you're eating no fat, it's going to be hard for your body to absorb it.
Yeah. Yeah. So is that being prepared and being aware now? There's a transition in seasons. So forward planning.
Yeah. Easier said than done for a lot of.
Yeah. Well, especially when, as I said, when the routine has been stipulated by something like work and stuff. So, but there's still things we can control.
Definitely. I'd love to know what the people listening to this, what their routine is and whether theirs change.
Yeah. Where does your routine change through the seasons? Are there certain things that you perhaps focus on? Are there some things that you focus on that we haven't covered or are unique to you? Certainly drop us a line on our emails or social media or on the comments.
I'll send you answers on a postcard.
Yeah.
I think they're still postmen nowadays.
Labeled to the one
P.O. Box.
P.O. Box squeaky. and let us know. And so change of season, great opportunity, but also it puts some stress on the body. So how do you prepare for that? Cool. Until next time,
have a squeaky one.
Keep squeaking.